27th chapter and the first verse. Sri Bhagavanuvacha Prakritisto api purusho Najyade prakritir gunaihi Avikarat agatratvan Nirgunatvaji jalarkavad Sri Bhagavanuvacha Prakritisto api purusho Najyade prakritir gunaihi Avikarat agatratvan Nirgunatva jalarkavad Sri Bhagavanuvacha Prakritisto abhipurusho Najyade prakritir gunaihi Avikarat agatratvan Nirgunatva jalarkavad. Synonyms. Sri Bhagavanuvacha, the personality of Godhead, said, Prakritistaha, residing in the material body. Abhi, although. Purushaha, the living entity. Na, not. Ajyade is affected. Prakrdehi, of material nature. Gunehi, by the modes. Avigara, from being without change. Agartratvat, by freedom from proprietorship. Nirgunatva, from being unaffected by the qualities of material nature. Jala, on water. Arkava, like the sun. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation. The personality of Godhead Kapila continued. When the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature, because he is unchanging and does not claim proprietorship, he remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in a material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on water. Purport. In the previous chapter, Lord Kapila Deva has concluded that simply by beginning the discharge of devotional service, one can attain detachment and transcendental knowledge for understanding the science of God. Here the same principle is confirmed. A person who is detached from the modes of material nature remains just like the sun reflected on water. When the sun is reflected on water, the movement of the water or the coolness or unsteadiness of the water cannot affect the sun. Similarly, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha. When one engages fully in the activities of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, he became just like the sun reflected on water. Although a devotee appears to be in the material world, actually he is in the transcendental world. As the reflection of the sun appears to be on the water, but is many millions miles away from the water. So, one engaged in Bhakti Yoga process is nirguna, or unaffected by the qualities of the material nature. Abhikara means without change. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that each and every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. And thus his eternal position is to cooperate or to dovetail his energy with the Supreme Lord. That is his unchanging position. As soon as he employs his energy and activities for the sense gratification, this change of position is called vikara. Similarly, even in this material body, when he practices devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, he comes to the position which is without change, because that is his natural duty, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Liberation means reinstatement in one's original position. The original position is one of rendering service to the Lord, bhakti yogena bhaktiya. When one becomes detached from the material attraction and engages fully in devotional service, that is changelessness. Agartatvat means not doing anything for sense gratification. When one does something at his own risk, there is a sense of proprietorship and therefore reaction. But when one does everything for Krishna, there is no proprietorship over the activities. By changelessness and by not claiming the proprietorship of activities, one can immediately situate himself in the transcendental position in which one is not touched by the modes of material nature. just as the reflection of the sun is unaffected by the water. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stabidam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadabhyam Dadadhi Sapadandigam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Davadagamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunathanidam Tam Sajivam Sadhuidam Savadudam Parijana Sagidam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalitam Shri Vishakhanidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandhu Jagatpade Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanda Namosture Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarupasya Kripa Sindhubhyev cha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Om Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimade Lokanath Swami Dinamine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dinamine Namaste Sarasada Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Om Namo Aniruddhaya Rishikeshendriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivurtatmane Harihi Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you so much for joining this very auspicious Bhagavatam class. Throughout the day, throughout the week, we try to hear from Srimad Bhagavatam. So in this, we are beginning this chapter 27, third canto, which is titled as Understanding Material Nature. So the previous chapter was titled as The Fundamental Principles of the Material Nature. So now we are trying to understand the material nature. Here, Kapila Dev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is instructing Mother Devahudi about the facts and aspects of the material nature and the fundamental principles of the material nature. In the previous chapter, the beginning section, Srila Kapila Dev mentioned to Mother Devahudi, understanding this knowledge, which is transcendental, one can completely liberate himself from the material clutches. It's very important that we understand this knowledge. Knowledge leads to transcendental devotional service. So knowledge is very important. That's why Kapila Devi is explaining the different aspect of this spiritual and the material nature. So in this last chapter, as well as this chapter, Kapila Devi is very well explained about the difference between the spiritual and the material nature and how one can overcome or one can come out or liberate himself from this material nature to that his original spiritual constitutional position or spiritual nature. So in these words, Kapila Dev, the Supreme Lord, is mentioning the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila continued, when the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature, because he is unchanging and does not claim proprietorship, he remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in a material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on water. So this verse is revealing that the transcendental nature of the living entity, the spiritual nature of the living entity, but even though that spiritual, the transcendental nature or the spark or the spirit soul come in contact with this material nature, but we think that when it is covered by this material energy, then we think that then everything is this temporary nature. So all that what we need to do is actually go ask for this detection of or the dictation of this material energy or the various aspects of or the elements of this material energy. So we completely emerged and entangled with it. But here Kapila Dev is mentioning that there is a transcendental nature beyond which is remain apart from the reactions of these modes of material nature. So how Kabiladev came to this conclusion, and that's what is in the last chapter, which is concluding. So it's very beautiful in the last chapter, the fundamental principles. We know that Mother Devahudi was inquire about how the Lord is requesting the Supreme Lord that can you explain to me that the various potencies and energies of the Supreme Lord, how he manifests in various ways. So that's where the Lord Kapiladev was started to explain about the principles of material nature. So initially, the Kapiladev was mentioning that Lord, the creations of this material nature, the creation starts from that, from the Lord Himself, and then the ways that Kapiladev mentioning that when the living entity started to desire separately from the Lord, and then that's where it is mentioned that when the material energy, material energy then comes upon, so it's manifested from the Supreme Lord for the living entities. It is originated from the false ego, or it's come from the material desires or the desires separately from the Lord, then it arises from there. So that created the false ego, and then false ego then created various modes of material nature. But beginning that, before that, then that the complete elements or that the creations or the ingredients for this creation is manifested before that. That is called pradhan or unmanifested nature when prakriti manifested. So this is what it is, understanding the material nature or understanding this prakriti. So prakriti is considered as the material nature, and the unmanifested nature is considered as the pradhan, or that is unmanifested. So it is in the original form. So when it comes to prakriti, that's what is we are all belongs to, or our material nature. It's not that just when you say, oh, material nature, prakriti, or this universe, but it is explaining that what is there in this universe, what is, and Srila Prabhupada mentioning, which is called the cosmic intelligence. The entire cosmic intelligence is actually how it is manifesting, how it is working, how it is coordinating, how it is taking place, how it is functioning, and how it is functioning in each and every living entity. So it is considered as the great or the Mahat Tattva or the great principles or the great cosmic intelligence. So that's where the cosmic manifestation taking place from the unmanifested to the manifest. Then Kapila Dev was mentioning that from that the false ego, the ahangar, the various divisions of the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, sattva gun, rajogun, and tamogun, then from there the interactions and the interactions of these various elements, that which is called the 24 great elements, right, the Mahat Tattva, that is started from that from the Lord's creative energy, the sound manifested, and from the sound the air, ether manifested, from the ether the air manifested, and from the air fire manifested, and from the fire the water manifested, and from the water earth manifested, and also the subsequent elements of all this, and is all related and connected. And then from the air, that the touch, the sense of touch manifested from the air, from the fire, the sense of the form manifested, and from the sense of water, the taste manifested, and from the sense of the air, the smell, the fragrance manifested. So then it's also explaining that how the functions of each elements. It's also mentioned that the fire, with the fire there is a palette, and there is various the function taste and the form and so many things manifested accordingly. Then Kapiladev was very nicely explaining this one, and also the deities also manifested in order to control all this. The predominant deities are also manifested from the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord's potency, as is mentioned that the Parasya Shakti Vivideva Sruyade. That's what it is mentioned in the previous chapter, that fundamentally it is explaining about the cause and the effect of the all the creations. and the cause and the effect. So this is what the cause is also the Supreme Lord, and the effect is also the manifestation of the Supreme Lord. That's why called the Karana and the Karya. The cause is called Karana, and the Karya is the effect. That means if there is any cause, any Karana, there is also an effect. When there is a sun, there is a light as well as there is heat. So the cause is the sun, and the Karya, the effect is the sun, the sunlight and the heat. So similarly, anything in this world is actually part of this cause and the effect, the Karya Karana, or that's why Sarva Karana Karana. So the source and the cause, everything is that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything is transformation of that Supreme Energy to the various other energies. That's why it is known as Sarva Karana Karana. So like that, the predominant deity also manifested, and then we can see that Lord then created, then Lord enters into that each universe. When it is manifested, Lord enters into that each universes, and it's mentioned that it's called Hiranmaya or Hiranyagarbha or Hiranmaya. It is considered as an anda. It's considered as an egg. It's a cosmic egg. It's a huge and vast cosmic egg. So when Mahavishnu is the cause of all the ingredients of the Mahat Tattva, then the Virat Purusha or the Lord's another manifestation or called Garbhodaksha Vishnu is entered into this universe, and then is called the Hiranmaya, that Virat Purusha or Hiranmaya. And then Lord from the Lord's body, then everything is actually started to function like that. And it's mentioned that this in the similarly it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita like that: earth, water, fire, air, ether, Kammano Buddhirevaja, means mind, intelligence, and ego. These are all the various layers of it. So when earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, then it is mentioned that this is layered 10 times, 10 times bigger than each layer of it in the Hiranmaya, in this Virat Purusha. So then Virat Purusha then decided to think, then or decided to see the eyes manifested. When the Virat Purusha started to grab something, then that the hands manifested. Then the predominant deity of Indra manifested. Then when the Virat Purusha started to see, the eyes manifested, also the predominant deity of the sun god manifested, sun glow up. Like that, then the Virat Purusha wanted to move, then the legs manifested, and the predominant deity of Lord Vishnu manifested. So when the Virat Purusha wanted to breathe, the nostril appeared, and also the predominant deity of Ashwini Devadas appeared. Then the Lord wanted to hear, then the ears manifested, then Drik Devadas appeared. So like that, the Lord's each part and each anga of the Lord is manifested in the Virat Purusha. So then what happens? Then all this predominant deity and the Lord was lying down, and then Lord is in the slumber state, in the sleeping state. Even though it is created, even though it's manifested, it is in a sleeping state. So then all this predominant deity wanted to know its original state, or called Sattvam. Sattvam means its original state. So even though they are created, they cannot function itself. So in order to function itself, they have to identify their source. So like Brahma came manifested from this Virat Purusha or this Garbhodaksha Vishnu. Then Brahma was initially not knowing anything that what to do. And Brahma was in complete darkness. And Brahma was on the lotus and doesn't know what to do. Then that's where that the sound came into the heart of Brahmaji. So similarly, these demigods wanted to know the original sattva or the original or origin of their existence. So they also then entered back into the body of Virat Purusha. So then started to Indra entered through the hands, but the Lord is not waking up. Then the Brahma entered into the intelligence in the heart, and Lord was not waking up or still in sleep. The moon god entered into the mind. Lord doesn't waking up. The Dikpalagas entered in the ears, and they did it. The Lord is not waking up. The Vishnu entered to the hand, is not waking up. So similarly, all these predominant deities are actually re-entered into the body of Virat Purusha, but Lord is not at all waking up. Then finally, that the origin of everything, that the supreme consciousness, that is considered the super soul or Paramatma, That's the Lord's own potency that Paramatma then entered into that, the body of Virat Purusha. Then the Lord wake up, right? So Lord walk up, and then that's where that also that the same Paramatma then entered into each and every living entity. Then it got its original state, original nature. What is that original nature? Because of when Paramatma, so we are all, as Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, all living entities are eternally part and parcel of that supreme law, or that all living entities are part and parcel of that Paramatma. Is that Paramatma doesn't exist, then nothing can work. Nothing exists or nothing can work. Everything is in the sleeping state, or we can say that it does not function. So anything that has to be function, that should be the Paramatma is the cause. So the even in our body, the Paramatma is the cause of all our activities, all our function. Because the existence of Paramatma, we are also there as a tiny portion of it, is known as Jivatma, or the living entities. That's why Supreme Lord says that in the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, 7th verse, that Mame Vamsho Jivaloke Jiva Buddha Sanadana. All living entities are my part and parcel, and all living entities are my part and parcel. So when it comes, the Paramatma is there as the consciousness or the supreme consciousness, then all these predominant deities that understood that this is that the original state of that any living entity, or original state of the Supreme Lord. So that's where the Kapila Devi is remembering and continuing with that word. When the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature. So even though that we have all these ingredients, all these 24 elements, all these demigods, predominant deity, and all these modes of material nature, which is originally manifested from that, the Supreme Lord also, and then even though it is all there, then the actual living entity or the supreme consciousness and unaffected, or it's remain apart from the reactions of the modes of material nature. So why it is Kapila Dev mentioned here to Mother Devagudi? Because of this is our original nature. So that's our transcendental nature or the spiritual nature, or our original constitutional position. So we know that Srila Prabhupada was giving this very beautifully, explaining this one. The living entity is considered as the marginal potency or Tadastha Shakti, which is superior in nature, when the superior potency or the living entity, this is what is exactly mentioned, that when that supreme consciousness, that supreme potency, the living entity or the Tadastha Shakti or the marginal potency come in contact with this superior energy, that is their original nature or original constitutional position. But at the same time, this superior energy, the living entity, is come in contact with this inferior energy or that material nature, that is an incompatible situation. That's where the problems and all the suffering is, because of we are in an incompatible situation. Like a fish out of water. When a fish is in the water, that is their original state and original nature. But that fish is out of water, then what happens? It starts to struggle for its life. Sarva in a struggle for its life. Similarly, we are all struggling for our life with this material entanglement, because of we are affected by this material nature. So we think that this material nature is everything. But when we look at that, the material nature and the spiritual nature, there is two far different, entirely opposite of each other when we look at the spiritual nature and the material nature. That's what is exactly is mentioning here. As long as we understand this, our original constitutional position is our superior spiritual nature. We are in compatible situation. We are in our original nature. That's where our home. That's what Srila Prabhupada says, the back home, back to Godhead. That means that's our original nature. But as long as we are not understanding, so this, and then we are entangled with this material energy, or that material energy is then differentiated or mentioned in so many other names like illusory energy, the Maya Shakti, or so many ways that we explains that. And again, that is also transformed this material energy in great like 24 elements. That same material energy is transformed into 24 elements. The same material energy is transformed into, so all these senses, mind, intelligence are all part of this material energy. That's what is understanding this material nature means, understanding this prakriti, understanding what is this material energy. As we know that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that, right? Matras parshastu kaundeya shidoshna samadukkada agama apayino anitya stamsidakshosa bharada. Oh Arjuna, All this happiness and distress is like a summer and winter, which comes and goes, like which arises from the sense perception. So Krishna is saying that which arises from the sense perceptions. So all this happiness and the distress is all arises from the sense perception. So this happiness, what we call so-called the material happiness or the distress, which is also part of this material nature. This is the results of our interaction with the senses and the mind and the intelligence. When we interact ourselves, that the soul, that's why the soul is covered, or we can say that the contaminated consciousness, or it is covered like a fire is covered by a smoke or covered by an ash. Similarly, the fire, the living entity, that the spirit soul is covered by all this material energy or this material nature. Then we are, as per, we are dancing as per the will, as per this material nature, or we call maya, or we call illusional energy. So this is the way that we are suffering in this world. So this living entity is suffering because of we are coming completely immersed into this material energy. So, but we also have another spiritual energy. That's what is we are originally. That's a spiritual potency or the living entity. And as it says that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says there are two kinds of energy, right? Apareya vidasto manyam prakritim vidime par. Oh Arjuna, Abare, as it's beginning like this, it's Bhumi Rapo Nano Vayu Kamano Buddhi Revaja, Ahangaram Kamano Buddhi Revaja, Ahangaram Idiyame Bhinna Prakrashtadaha. All these earth, water, fire, air, ether, the mind, intelligence, and ego, these are all my separated energy. So then Krishna further says, Apareya Midastu Vanyam Prakriti Midime Param. Oh Arjuna, beyond this manifested, beyond this material energy, there is another superior nature of mind. That's what is the living entities. Apareyam idastu vanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhuta mahabhagu. Oh Arjuna, jiva bhut, that living entity, but ye dhare edam chigat, but they are suffering and entangled in this material energy, and they are suffering in this world. Similarly, Krishna was saying that Mamevamshu Jivaloka Jivabhuta Sanatana Manashastran Indriyani Prakristani Kartati. Manashastran Indriyani. Because of that, mind and that senses are entangled into this material nature. Prakritistani Karshati. The Karshati means they are suffering in this world. As Krishna says that, again, that this material nature, the nature of this material is mentioned that Ashashvatam Dukkale. That means it is temporary as well as at the same time full of misery, as it's mentioned that. So why it is that temporary and misery? Because of its subject for changing. That's just dualities are there. Then there is when the material nature subjected to change. That's what is, then dualities are already there. Suppose a flower is coming out and it cannot stay forever. It is when it started to decay. That's why everything, every living entity, everything in this world is subject for six kinds of changes. That means there is a creation or there's a birth. Then there is some time it stays for sometimes about birth, death, and old age diseases. That's a four. Then it stays for some time. It started to decay. Why? Because of this is subjected for the material change. So as it says that, see, Krishna says that, but one who realizes that our original nature, the transcendental nature, our eternal constitutional position, such devotees are, as Krishna says, Mahatma Namstu Mamartham Devim Prakriti Masvadaha. Such devotees can come to that Devim Prakriti. What is that Devim Prakriti? That is the devotional services. As Srila Prabhupada says that the moment we come into this Bhakti Yoga, that's our original nature. That's our constitutional position because we are in contact with that original superior spiritual nature. Otherwise, we are into this material inferior nature. Then we are struggling in this world. So, Mahatma Namstu Mampartam Devim Prakriti Mas, Devim Prakriti, that great souls are under my superior nature or my divine nature. So, our divine original superior nature, the devotees come to that spiritual consciousness. So, come to that superior consciousness. Because of that superior consciousness, that superior nature, that everything manifests, everything exists, everything taking place. But we are illusion. Because of that illusory energy, we are under the spell of this material energy, that's why it's called under the darkness, right? When there is a darkness, then we cannot see anything. But when there is a light, we can see everything. Similarly, we are in this material nature, means this nature of this material is by default is darkness. So we are under the spell of this darkness, and then when there is a light, then we can see. Similarly, when we are in contact with the superior nature or that eternal, that the supreme light, then that our consciousness is enlightened, then we can see things clearly. We are with the superior nature or our spiritual nature of the Lord. So that's what is Kapila Devi is mentioning here. So it's very important That is a transcendental science that we are going through, and it's wonderful to listen and hear. Thank you so much, and I will stop here. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Madhuri Prabhuji. Thank you.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, दंडवत प्रणाम।
दंडवत प्रणाम। Okay. Okay, so let's conclude. Okay, thank you, dear devotees, for joining today. Let's chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra 3 times. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Let's chant the Narasimha mantra. Shri Narasimha, Jai Narasimha, Jai Jai Narasimha. Prahladesha, Jai Patma Mukha Patma Bhringam. Shri Narasimha, Jai Narasimha, Jai Jai Narasimha. Prahladesha, Jai Patma Mukha Patma Bhringam. Om Ugram Viryam Mahavishnam Jalantam Sarvado Mukham. Narasimham Vishanam Bhadram Murtyo Namamiham. Let us pray our obeisance to all the assembled Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripasindhubheva Padidanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Viraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Hari Bol.
Wonderful day ahead.